Is this some kind of joke? The officer's voice was sharp and mean. It cut through the hot afternoon air. She stood with one hand on her hip. Her sunglasses showed a weird reflection of the man sitting in front of her. Do you even know where you are, old man? Walter Green, 82 years old, did not answer. He stayed perfectly still on his old motorcycle. It was a shiny machine of clean chrome and deep red paint that hummed with heat. His hands, in worn leather gloves, rested easy on the handlebars. His eyes looked far away, at the long road that went to the horizon. He'd seen roads like this before, some filled with smoke, others with dust. All of them led either to home or to death. This one was just quiet. The first officer, whose name tag read Officer Taylor, looked at her younger partner, Jason, with a frustrated look. "License and registration," Taylor said loudly, like she was talking to someone who couldn't hear well or think well. "Turn that bike off now." Walter blinked slowly. He was calm while the officers were angry. He looked back at them. His dark eyes were clear and sharp. He got off the bike with smooth movements that didn't match his age. The old leather of his jacket made soft sounds. The engine made ticking sounds as it cooled down. He slowly reached into his jacket, took out an old leather wallet, and handed over his license and the bike's papers. Taylor grabbed them from his hand. She looked at the license. Walter Green, 82. She laughed a short, mean laugh. "You're a little old for a joyride, aren't you, Walter?" She gave the papers to Jason to check them. "What's the hurry? We saw you going too fast when you came into town." "I wasn't in a hurry, officer," Walter said. His voice was low and steady. It was a voice used to giving orders and staying calm in chaos, but now it was just used for simple truth. "I was going the same speed as other cars." "The law is the law, not a suggestion," Taylor snapped back. "We got a report about a suspicious person on a loud motorcycle checking out the shops downtown. An old man, they said. Fits what you look like." The mean words hung in the air, thick and ugly. "Checking out," Walter repeated the words. Not with anger, but with quiet curiosity, like he was looking at a strange bug. A small crowd started to gather on the sidewalk of the quiet main street. A mother pulled her child closer. A few teenagers started recording on their phones. Their faces showed excitement and worry. The show of two police officers yelling at an elderly black man was too interesting to ignore. Taylor seemed to grow bigger with the attention. Her power felt stronger because of the crowd. She walked around Walter, looking at him like evidence. "What's this?" she asked. Her finger poked at a small worn patch on his jacket. It was a simple leather circle, faded and cracked. It showed a roughly stitched hawk diving down. "Your little biker gang? The Ancient Flyers?" She smiled at her own joke. Jason moved around, looking uncomfortable. "It's a keepsake," Walter said calmly. "A keepsake?" Taylor repeated. Her voice was full of mockery. "Right. Look, I don't know what you're doing, but this story isn't working. You're being unclear. You match a description, and frankly, you look like you could be a danger to yourself and others." She took a step closer. Her face was inches from his. "We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. We can search you and your bike right now, or we can take you downtown and take it apart there. Your choice." The threat was clear. Making him feel bad was the point. Walter's jaw stayed relaxed. His breathing stayed even. He had stood his ground before much scarier men than this loud officer. He had faced death itself in jungles so thick the sky disappeared. Her anger was just noise. But the disrespect, that landed. It landed on a place deep inside him that he kept protected, a place of honor and memory. He didn't move. He just looked at her. His eyes held the weight of decades she couldn't possibly understand. "You will not search my motorcycle," he said. The words were quiet but full of unshakable strength. Taylor's face got hard. Her fake patience disappeared completely. "That's it, Jason. Handcuff him. He's blocking us." As Jason slowly reached for his handcuffs, Walter's eyes drifted past Taylor's shoulder, back to that patch on his chest. The sun shined on the cracked leather. For just a second, the quiet street disappeared. The air was no longer thick with humidity, but with helicopter wind and red dust. The sound wasn't a ticking engine, but the loud whump 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 of helicopter blades. He was 24 again, sweat stinging his eyes. The smell of airplane fuel and fear filled his lungs. A young officer, a kid named Rodriguez with a face full of freckles, was screaming over the radio. His voice cracked with panic as green bullets cut through the air around their medical helicopter. Below them, a stuck infantry squad was about to be attacked. Rules said to leave. The landing zone was too dangerous. But Walter, the pilot in charge, saw the faces of the men on the ground. He pressed his mic. His own voice cut through the chaos with that same unnatural calm. "We're going in," he'd said. The hawk patch on his flight jacket, a gift from a grateful tribe in the mountains, felt like protection against the storm. "I said, handcuff him!" Taylor's scream pulled him back to now. The vision disappeared, leaving only the sun-bright pavement and the officer's angry face. The memory, a flash of fire and duty, went back into its quiet corner of his soul. Its meaning, a secret she was stepping on with her ignorance. Across the street, half hidden behind a newspaper box, a young man named Chris watched the scene. His phone was held loosely in his hand. He wasn't recording for fun. He was documenting something wrong. A journalism student at the local community college, he had a nose for stories. And this one smelled wrong. The old man wasn't mean. He was dignified. The officer was on a power trip. Chris had seen the patch on the old man's jacket. It was faded, almost impossible to read. But it made him remember something. His own grandfather, a retired Air Force colonel, had a shadow box full of old squadron patches. They were sacred objects, each telling a story of service and sacrifice. Taylor's mockery of the patch felt like an insult. As Jason fumbled with the handcuffs, clearly not wanting to do it, Taylor got worse. "We're going to take this rust bucket and you're coming with us for a full check. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you've got memory problems. We'll find out." That was the breaking point for Chris. This wasn't a traffic stop anymore. It was abuse of power. He remembered a story his grandfather told him about a special unit at the nearby army base, Fort Morgan, a legendary unit. His grandfather mentioned them in hushed, respectful tones. The Night Eagles, he'd called them. If you ever see a man wearing that diving hawk, you show him respect. He's walked through hell so you don't have to. Chris's heart pounded. It was a long shot, a crazy idea. But he had to do something. He quickly searched for the public office at Fort Morgan. The first number he found went to a voicemail. He tried another, a non-emergency line for the base command. A crisp, professional voice answered. "Fort Morgan Command, how may I direct your call?" Chris's voice shook slightly. "Yes, hello. My name is Chris. I'm in downtown Riverside on Main Street. The local police have pulled over an elderly black man. I think he might be one of yours." "Sir, this is a line for the military base," the operator said. Her tone showed a hint of impatience. "We don't get involved in local police matters." "No, you don't understand," Chris insisted. His voice rose with urgency as he watched Jason finally click one handcuff onto Walter's wrist. "He's wearing a patch, a leather patch with a hawk on it, a diving hawk. My grandfather told me what that meant. The police are arresting him. They're calling him senile. His name is Walter Green." There was a sudden, sharp silence on the other end. The operator's professional distance vanished. It was replaced by something else, a new energy. "Repeat that name, son." "Walter Green," Chris said, saying every word clearly. He heard a muffled sound, the operator speaking to someone else in the room, her voice urgent and low. Then another voice came on the line, deeper, harder, a voice that carried natural authority. "This is Colonel Bennett. Where are you, son? Give me your exact location." Chris rattled off the street names. His eyes were wide. He could hear keyboards clicking fast in the background, hushed but intense commands being given. The mood on the other end of the phone had changed from office work to coiled spring tension in seconds. "Stay on the line," the colonel commanded. "Help is on the way." Inside the command center at Fort Morgan, the name Walter Green had landed like thunder. The operator who took the first call, a young sergeant, had gone pale. She immediately alerted the duty officer. He sprinted down the hall to Colonel Bennett's office without even knocking. Bennett, a man with a chest full of ribbons and the sharp eyes of a career pilot, was in the middle of a meeting when his helper burst in and whispered the name. Bennett stood up so fast his chair screeched back. The meeting was over. "Get me a map of Riverside now," he barked. "Who is the boss at the local police? Get me their chief on the line. I want every available vehicle from the motor pool fueled and ready. Now." The room, once filled with the dull sound of a PowerPoint presentation, erupted into controlled chaos. Maps were opened. Phones rang. Young officers moved with speed and purpose they usually saved for live fire exercises. The name Walter Green was not just a name to them. It was a legend. It was the name of the man who had almost single-handedly founded their elite aviation unit. He was the original Night Eagle, a pilot whose acts in Vietnam were the stuff of whispered legend. A man who had flown missions no one else would dare, who had saved hundreds of lives, and who had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for an act of bravery so deep it was still taught as a case study in courage at the War College. He was, to the men and women of Fort Morgan, living history. The idea that he was on a roadside in handcuffs being humiliated by local cops was not just an insult. It was a crime against honor. "Sir, the chief of police is on line 1, a helper announced. Bennett grabbed the phone. "This is Colonel Marcus Bennett, commanding officer of the 160th SOAR. I am told that 2 of your officers are currently holding Master Chief Warrant Officer 5 Walter Green retired. You have 60 seconds to explain to me why I shouldn't bring the full weight of the United States Army down on your little town." His voice was deadly calm, a razor blade wrapped in silk. On Main Street, Officer Taylor was enjoying her victory. She had the old man in handcuffs. The bike was about to be towed, and the crowd was watching her, the person in charge. She had shown everyone who was the boss. "All right, Grandpa, let's go," she said, grabbing Walter's arm. "Time for your checkup. We need to make sure you're good enough to even be on the road." It was the final mean overreach. She wasn't just enforcing the law. She was taking away his dignity, questioning the very soundness of his mind. She was erasing the man and replacing him with a made-up version, a confused, difficult old man who was a public problem. The crowd murmured. A wave of discomfort went through them. The obvious cruelty of her words was too much even for the most skeptical watchers. Walter didn't fight back. He simply stood, his handcuffed hands behind his back, his posture as straight as a flagpole. He had gone through worse. He had been a prisoner of war for 6 months. This was nothing, but the pity in the eyes of the crowd stung more than the cold metal of the cuffs. Jason, who had been trying to make himself small, suddenly looked up. His eyes were wide. He tugged on Taylor's sleeve. "Taylor!" "What is it, Jason?" she snapped, irritated. "Listen," he said. At first, it was just a faint, rhythmic thumping. A vibration felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. It was a sound that was deeply out of place in the quiet downtown. Then it grew, a low, deep beat that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Whump, 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 whump. Heads turned. The crowd looked up at the sky, confused. The sound was getting louder, closer. It became the unmistakable crushing roar of multiple helicopters. High above, 3 sleek black-painted Apaches swept over the town in a tight formation. Their shadows passed like clouds over the street. They weren't armed for war, but their presence was a statement of huge power. They circled once, a gesture of aerial salute, before turning hard and heading back toward the base. But the real show was on the ground. Screeching to a stop at both ends of the block, boxing in the police car, were 4 black Chevrolet SUVs with government plates. Doors flew open. A dozen figures in crisp Army uniforms got out. They moved with disciplined urgency that made the local police look like amateurs. They were different ranks and ages, but they all carried themselves with the same unmistakable bearing of elite soldiers. The last to come out of the lead vehicle was a tall, big man with graying hair and the eagle symbol of a full colonel on his shoulders. He walked forward. His polished black shoes clicked on the pavement. The crowd parted before him like the Red Sea. He ignored everyone. The crowd, Taylor, Jason. His eyes fixed on only one person. He stopped 3 feet in front of Walter Green. His back went perfectly straight. He brought his right hand up in a salute so sharp and perfect it could have cut glass. "Master Chief Warrant Officer Green," Colonel Bennett's voice boomed across the now silent street. "Colonel Marcus Bennett, 160th SOAR. Sir, it is an honor." Taylor's jaw dropped. The color left her face, leaving a pale, sickly white. Jason looked like he was about to faint. The crowd gasped, a big sound of shock and realization. The teenagers who had been laughing and recording now held their phones steady, catching a moment of deep, unexpected seriousness. The other soldiers followed their commander's lead. They formed a loose half circle and gave their own salutes. A dozen hands all raised in a gesture of ultimate respect to the handcuffed old man. Bennett held his salute, his eyes locked on Walter's. "Sir, I was told you were in some trouble." He slowly lowered his hand. His gaze fell to the handcuffs. A flicker of cold anger crossed his face before he hid it. He turned to Taylor. His voice dropped to a dangerously low temperature. "Officer, explain to me why you have a national hero in handcuffs." Taylor stammered. Her confidence shattered. He was speeding. He matched the description. He was being uncooperative." "Uncooperative?" Bennett's voice was ice. He took a step toward her, and she backed away. "This man is Walter Green. Do you have any idea who that is? This man holds the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, 3 Bronze Stars for Valor, 4 Purple Hearts. He flew over 800 combat missions in Vietnam. He was shot down twice, captured once, and still went back. He is the man who created the pilot training program for the unit I am now proud to command. The tactics that U.S. Army helicopter pilots use to this day to fly into dangerous landing zones to rescue wounded soldiers were invented by him in the cockpit under enemy fire." With each sentence, Bennett's voice grew stronger, a list of honor that echoed through the stunned silence. He pointed a stiff finger at the faded patch on Walter's jacket. "You see this patch? This isn't a biker gang symbol. This is the original symbol of the Night Eagles. He is pilot number 1. He doesn't wear it. He is it. This man has been trusted with the lives of hundreds of soldiers and with military hardware worth more than your entire city budget. And you have him in handcuffs because you thought he looked suspicious." Bennett turned to one of his men. "Sergeant Major, remove those cuffs." The Sergeant Major, a mountain of a man with a stern face, stepped forward. He didn't have a key. He simply took out a small tool from his pocket. With 2 quick clicks, the handcuffs fell away from Walter's wrists. Walter rubbed his wrists, his face unchanged, still a mask of calm dignity. Bennett then turned his full angry attention back to Taylor and the now shaking Jason. "You two are a disgrace to your uniforms. Your chief is on his way here, and you can believe me when I tell you that he and I are going to have a very long talk. It will likely be followed by a formal apology from your department and a required retraining program on how to treat citizens with respect, particularly the ones who have bled for your right to wear that badge." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Now step aside." Humbled and terrified, Taylor and Jason practically ran out of the way. Colonel Bennett turned back to Walter, his attitude softening instantly. "Sir, are you all right? Can we give you a ride back to the base?" Walter finally smiled, a small, weary curve of his lips. "I'm fine, Marcus. Thank you for the dramatic entrance. A little over the top, even for you." Bennett allowed himself a small smile in return. "We aim to impress, sir. You taught us that." Walter looked from the colonel to the shaken officers, then to the wide-eyed crowd. He saw the teenager Chris still standing by the newspaper box, a look of awe on his face. Walter met the boy's eyes and gave a slow, careful nod of thanks. He then turned to Taylor, who was staring at the ground, unable to meet his gaze. "Officer," Walter said, his voice gentle now, no anger or victory. "Courage and authority are not the same thing. Authority is a badge you're given. Courage is what you do when no one is looking. Remember that." He patted the leather patch on his chest. The sun caught it again. For a moment, the image of the diving hawk seemed to burn with new intensity. He wasn't looking at the street anymore. The jungle floor, a clearing, smelling of rain and smoke. A much younger Colonel Bennett, then just a fresh-faced lieutenant, was handing him the patch, freshly stitched by a local villager. It was a gift for an impossible rescue, for flying a broken helicopter through a storm to get Bennett's wounded patrol out. "The village elder called you the spirit hawk that hunts in the dark," the young Bennett had said, his voice thick with emotion. "He said you fly where others can't. He's right." Walter had taken the patch, a simple piece of leather that now felt heavier than any metal. It wasn't a symbol of rank or an award from a general. It was a token of respect from the men whose lives he had saved. It was a promise. The aftermath was swift and decisive. As Colonel Bennett had promised, Riverside's chief of police arrived. His face was a mask of embarrassed apology. There was a tense private conversation held on the sidewalk. The contents left Officer Taylor suspended. Officer Jason was put on desk duty while they investigated. The city issued a formal public apology to Walter Green, which he kindly accepted. But the real change came later. Fort Morgan, in partnership with the Riverside PD, started the Walter Green Valor Program, a required training program for all new recruits and a refresher for veterans. It focused on de-escalation, community engagement, and most importantly, recognizing the quiet signs of service and sacrifice in their community's elders. The story of the traffic stop on Main Street became a core part of the program, a warning tale of what happens when authority forgets humility. A few months later, Walter was at the local hardware store picking out some bolts for a fence he was fixing. As he stood in the aisle, a woman approached him slowly. It was Taylor, no longer in uniform, dressed in simple, regular clothes. Her face showed a humility he hadn't seen before. "Mr. Green," she said, her voice quiet, "I just wanted to apologize in person. What I did was, there's no excuse." Walter looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "We all make mistakes, young lady. The important thing is what we learn from them." "I'm in the Valor program now," she said, "volunteering at the VA center, listening to their stories. I see things differently now." "Good," Walter said, offering a small, real smile. "That's all anyone can ask." He turned to go, then stopped. "Keep listening," he added. "The best stories are often the quietest." He walked away, leaving her standing in the aisle. A lesson learned not in a classroom or from a boss's punishment, but from the simple, humble grace of a true hero. The story of Walter Green reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes or announce their presence. They are the quiet figures among us, the humble neighbors and silent veterans whose courage is written not in headlines, but in the fabric of their lives. If you were inspired by this story of bravery and justice, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor our nation's heroes.